The Grass is Always Greener, Chapter 4. When the cloud of smoke and ash filled the hallway, General Number 1 reasoned that he did not get paid enough for this. Sure, being the top general to guard the volcano was a cushy job, especially since being blasted out of the top was no longer something to fear if he messed up. But when you work in a volcano and things start smoking like this, it usually meant something really bad had happened and you should run before you find yourself up to your knees in lava. It didn't help that General Number 1 had a smoke allergy. Already his eyes were watering and growing puffy, making it very hard for him to see. But just as quickly as the smoke came, it dissipated, leaving the shark-costumed man coughing and scrubbing his eyes. Remembering who he'd seen in the hallway before the smoke appeared, he squinted through his itchy eyes to find his boss's son and get them both out of here before whatever caused the smoke happened again. Only to find the hallway absent of the teenager. General Number 1's heart sank at the sight. He'd heard the kid cry out in alarm when the smoke showed up, and he hoped it didn't mean something bad happened to him. The boss would have his head if it did. Green Ninja? He called, still coughing slightly. We should get you to your father. Still, no sign of the teen. Instead, a very short green blur raced past him with a shout of, "Not a chance!" and chucking something heavy and gold at the general's head as it went. General Number 1 blinked at that in surprise. While green, that blur had been far too small and dressed too brightly to be his boss's kid. In fact, no one that short even should be on the island. Take your kids to work day wasn't until next week. Now, General Number 1 was a very superstitious man, and short green people with gold showing up when other people vanished could only mean one thing, and it was not good. He hurried back to the cafeteria and poked his head in just enough to see his boss still entertaining the other visiting ninja. "Hey, boss," he called, getting ready to bolt the second he delivered this news. His employer had never been one to mind the saying, "Don't shoot the messenger." Lord Garmadon, who had seemed to be in the middle of spinning a tale about his glory days, looked over at him in annoyance. "Yes, what is it, General Number 1? The general quaked in his costume and said rapidly, "Your son just got kidnapped by a leprechaun. Also, don't fire me. I quit. Bye!" With that, the now former General Number 1 took off down the hallway to get out of the volcano as fast as possible. He knew if there was one thing that would make Garmadon go back on his new no firing people out of a volcano rule, this would be it. With any luck, he could get enough of a head start to escape before his former employer could process the message. Meanwhile, back in the cafeteria, Lord Garmadon and the ninja force all started after him with their mouths dropped. What the heck? Lloyd was no stranger to being kidnapped. Already, in a short life, it had happened more times than he cared to count. It looked like this was another time to add to the pile. Still, for a kidnapping, it wasn't a very good one. He easily escaped the weird guy in the shark costume and made a break for it. Apparently, he had once been kidnapped for his dad, as if that was anything new. At least he was out of that fire. The heat and smoke had scared him far more than he liked to admit. It reminded him far too much of the time he'd been trapped in a... Lloyd skidded to a halt and stared in horror at the sight before him. Before him was a massive observation deck, giving him a view of Ninjago City in the distance, and revealing to him that he was standing inside of a massive volcano, Lloyd said in a breathless hiss. Unbidden, memories he tried so hard to bury started flashing through his eyes. Of the cage, the smoke, the heat, the hope his father and friends would save him only for it to be snatched away by the fall. The horrid dread of the rock slowly sinking into the lava with no way to get out. And this time, Kai wasn't here to rescue him. Lloyd couldn't help it. His eyes watered and he began quaking in fear. In response to his distress, his powers went haywire, and a dome of green energy burst out of him, spreading quickly throughout the area. Anything the energy touched began to malfunction. Light bulbs shattered, machines began whirring uncontrollably, the entire facility began blaring alarms as all the equipment suddenly had more energy than they could cope with. Lloyd didn't hang around to see the results. Once again, he was running through the hallways, more light bulbs shattering as he streaked past. He didn't know where he was going, or if it was the wrong way entirely. All he knew was that he had to get away. Away from the lava, away from the smoke, away from the heat, just away! Anything was better than that. He eventually found himself shooting down a staircase. Down, down, down. He lost track of how many floors, until a blue glow from one of the levels caught his eye. Blue! Blue was safe. It was cool and clear, the complete opposite, the burning orange and black of a volcano. Without a second thought, Lloyd wrenched the door open and shot through it, only to stop dead and stare up in amazement. The door had led to what appeared to be a massive tunnel. There were several massive, oddly shaped structures scattered throughout the tunnel, but Lloyd's attention wasn't on them. It was on the walls, which were made of domed, crystal-clear glass, allowing the little ninja to see through them, and revealed the tunnel was set at the bottom of the ocean. Looking out, he could see fish of all colors swim by in schools. Colorful reefs sway in the currents, and more sharks than he thought was normal swim lazily by. It was better than any aquarium he'd ever been to, and so beautiful he almost forgot his fear. Almost. A loud cracking sound had him turning around in time to see a wave of quickly cooling lava slowly roll down the embankment just outside the glass. Right, he was still in a glass tunnel underneath an active volcano. His fear climbing again, Lloyd began backing away from the entrance of the tunnel, getting ready to run the second it looked like the glass would break under the heat of the lava. To his surprise, the glass didn't even seem to react to the new layer of molten rock beside it, but Lloyd feared it wouldn't last. Just as panic began to overwhelm him, his back bumped into something big and incredibly soft. Something big and incredibly soft that was moving. Lloyd jumped away and wheeled around to face it, and found himself looking up and up and up, until Lloyd was practically leaning over backward to see the face of the biggest cat he'd ever seen in his life. Not even the Great Devourer had been this big. The cat stared at him with huge green eyes, and slowly it lowered its massive head to see him better. Feeling he was about to be eaten, Lloyd squeezed his eyes shut and braced himself. Only the teeth never came. Instead, he felt his entire body be practically lifted into the air as a moist sandpaper tongue licked him. He opened his eyes just in time for the cat to lick him again, wiping away any remaining tears. The sound of a deep, rumbling purr beginning to emanate from the beast. Seeing he was still scared out of his wits and nowhere near calming down, the cat gently leaned over, picked Lloyd up by his hood like he was the tiniest kitten imaginable, and carried him through the tunnel to one of the structures, revealing it to be a giant cat bed. Once there, the cat settled down comfortably in it, gently placed Lloyd down between her front paws, and licked his hair once again before settling down to just purr. As the monster cat's eyes slid closed, Lloyd slowly moved to try and sneak out of the bed and escape. But before he had even taken a step, the cat's big green eyes slid open once more and gave him a look that made it clear if he tried to run, the cat would easily catch him and bring him right back, so he had better stay put. Well, at least she seemed to have no intention of eating him. If anyone had told Lloyd this is what he'd be doing this morning, he'd have laughed and called them crazy. As it was, after training all day, the fire, and racing through the volcano, getting fussed over by a massive kitty wasn't so bad. The constant hum of the cat's purrs was soothing enough that as the adrenaline in his system wore off and the day's events caught up to him, Lloyd soon found himself drifting off to sleep. He'd find his way home later when things started making sense again. Meanwhile, the ninja and Garmadon were searching frantically for their vanished leader, a task made all the more difficult by the fact that everything seemed to be malfunctioning at the same time. "Is that general sure he didn't see a gremlin instead of a leprechaun?" Jay asked as he and Nia helped the scientists get everything back online before the facility's fail-safes failed and they all got doused in lava. "That would make more sense than anything else at the moment." "Less talking, more fixing," was Nia's only reply as she and two other scientists worked frantically not far away. Finally, the alarm stopped blaring, the lights turned back on, and things seemed to return to normal. Except for the fact that Lloyd had failed to appear throughout all of the mayhem. Something he would never do if he could help it. He was too good a leader to not step in and help when there's any kind of trouble. Where could he be? Kai asked aloud as both he and Garmadon stalked back and forth like a pair of caged tigers, waiting for the science nerds to give them all some answers. "We took a look outside the locker room where he was last seen," Cole said from where he was leaning against the wall, though his posture was far more tense than usual. "Nothing was there but the smell of smoke and a lot of broken light bulbs." "I did find this," Zane said, holding up a dented gold trophy with the name Dareth inscribed on the side. I am unsure what it means, however. My databanks of Garmadon's employees tell me there is no one with this name working here." At that moment, Jay perked up at his workstation. "Hey, I've got the security feeds. They're a little fuzzy from the energy fluctuations, but they can still give us an idea of what happened." "Well, what are you waiting for? Show it already!" Garmadon snapped. Jay jumped and Nia glared at the former warlord for his tone. They still quickly pulled the feed onto a large monitor. On screen, they watched a slightly grainy image of Lloyd stepping out of the locker room not far from ex-General No. 1. Then, in a burst of light and smoke, the screen cut to static. When the picture came back, Lloyd was gone, and a very short figure in green was seen throwing the trophy at the general, and before leaving the frame completely. Needless to say, they were now more confused than ever. But one thing was clear. Lloyd was gone, and it was likely the short green thing was responsible. Garmadon had only one thing to say to that. "Coco is so going to kill me."